These alternative mutual funds have become extremely popular as investors have poured tens of billions of dollars into them despite steep fees. Alan Haft joins us now to discuss the pros and cons of owning them in your portfolio. He's a partner with Kelly Haft Financial. I know, Mr. Haft, that these funds have their backers and they have their pros and cons, but for the life of me, I can't understand why someone would want to invest in one of these funds at the prices they typically charge and at the performance they so far have been able to generate.
Well, look, Tyler, when somebody hears the word hedge fund, it's enticing because traditionally hedge funds mean high returns. So the high returns, to a lot of people's minds, will offset the higher fees. So the performance is paramount for most investors, and in addition, hedge funds in a lot of people's minds will complement an already diversified portfolio and generally a new asset class.
And so from the way I understand the way they work, Alan, is that you do well in these funds when the market's, correcting, but you don't do so well if the market is rallying. Is that the case?
Well, the allure of the hedge fund is obviously, especially in the mutual fund instrument, that they can actually short the market, which you can't do in other mutual funds. But a good hedge fund will make money in an up or a down market. Doesn't make any difference.
But hedge funds as a group, correct me if I'm wrong here, Alan, over the past several years, hedge funds as a group have typically way underperformed the market, which may be just the point you're saying, because the market has generally been going up. It's not the time that most hedge funds have done well. There are exceptions, obviously.
Sure. No, listen, I would agree with that. Generally speaking, hedge funds, by and large, have underperformed the market. But right now, I think part of the allure of people going into the funds is because of the perception that the market is due for a correction. So if the market's due for a correction and you want to stay in the market, where do you go right now? So a lot of people are pouring money into these funds thinking that a correction is coming up and that the hedge funds should finally outperform the market.
So who are these funds for? Do you have to still be, even though they're for individual investors, do you still have to have a sizable portfolio, or can anybody sign up for them?
Not anymore. The traditional hedge fund will only take accredited investors, somebody who has $1 million of liquid net worth or above, generally speaking. So what these funds are trying to attract now are the Main Street investors that are not accredited, that can put in a very small amount of money and not have to be accredited to go into them.
All right, let me understand what these funds do. They use leverage. They invest in alternative investments like derivatives and so forth. They short the market. Give me more of that. And what do they charge for the privilege of this?
Right. So the hedge funds, there's basically three components that a fund can do. It can leverage, which means borrow money to increase returns, which, by the way, increases the risk on the portfolio. They can use most derivative investments, and they can also short the market. So if the market's going down, they can profit from a declining market. The fees, the published fees, are somewhere between 3 and 5%. But as a lot of people know, there's additional fees inside of mutual funds that aren't necessarily disclosed. So the fees can be, I've done some hardcore research on some of these funds, and I've seen fees as high as 7% in quite a few of them.
Real quickly, we just have a little bit of time left. You've been very diplomatic in all of your answers, talking about the pros and the cons. But when your clients come to you and say, look, I want to go into one of these alternative funds, what do you say? What's your view on them?
Everybody's different. Some people I think it's appropriate for, especially those that want to diversify a little bit more in an asset class that doesn't exist in their portfolio right now. But my paramount concern of these funds is that a traditional hedge fund can do things that a hedge fund inside the confines of a mutual fund cannot. So I always warn people, listen, if you're thinking you're going to invest actually into a hedge fund, you're really not actually in a hedge fund. You're in something that looks like a hedge fund, acts like a hedge fund, but be wary of the performance. You may not get as much bang for your buck as you think you might.
Hedge fund light? Alan?
I'm sorry, what? Hedge fund light. There you go. Yeah, right. Exactly, right.
All right, Alan, thank you very much for your help on this
Thanks for having me.
Alan Haft with Kelly Haft Financial.